Lual for what he's doing. It's actually a great thing that he's doing. And also, thank you for the support you're giving him. And I'd also like to acknowledge, because I have some of my colleagues here, I can see some familiar faces, and the great things you're doing here in Australia. That's one of the things that I always wish to do, and I'll always tell people, functionalize your education. You're not educated until you make it functional. So remember that. So I'm not going to tell you anything, because there's nothing I know that you don't know. But what I will tell you is the way I think, which is different from the way you think. So we can look at the same thing, but the reflection we do on it will be different. So we can rationalize it in different ways. That's what I'm going to do. I'm not telling you something you don't know. So, but I'll provoke you to think differently, and that will give you a chance to say something out of that. So don't expect to learn something different from what I'm saying. That's not what's going to happen. But I'll just provoke you. So writing these books is nothing. Anyone can do it. The only difference between someone who writes and someone who doesn't is patience. We all don't have patience. You've seen the ladies, and I'd like to acknowledge the ladies. I'm not going to say much because they've said everything that I wanted to say. And also, as you can remember, I'm not funny. So you bear with me, it might be boring a little bit, I'm not funny. And I'd like to acknowledge the women. This is a great work, and what you do is really amazing. And I wish you can also organize in the community to have a storytelling like this. And what are the messages behind the stories? And that is what I encourage you. And Dr. Corwell, you're doing an amazing job. So that is actually a good thing. I come from the western part of Canada, and in a province called Alberta, we have many South Sudanese. We have the same challenges. So we're trying to do the same thing, what you're doing, the tutoring program, and also to sort of give children something they can admire. You cannot tell a child to be proud of who they are and where they come from if there's nothing good they can admire in the community. So unless there's something they can admire in the community, what they'll always admire will always be outside, and there's no way you can bring them in unless there's something they can admire, something better than something happening outside the community. So thank you. So what I'll do is a short presentation on two of the last books. I'll not talk much. Even when Lual said that I'll have 2 sessions, I'll just try to make sure that I say everything now, but I'll try to provoke you so much so that you think about what I'm saying. So the other 2 books, this is the last book I published. It's not a historical book. It's an analysis of historical events. And I have contextualized the ideas in the way I see them. So when you read the book, you might say, I don't agree with it. But if you read it, you have a chance to review the book and see exactly what you don't like, or you can write your own book and criticize what is in this book. And that's how we go ahead. So you read, so you either review the book or read the book and write your book, criticize what is here. And that's what we should always do. And by now, you can see that we're going ahead and we're doing different things. What I would urge you to do is to support people who are doing great things. People like Corwell and people like Lual. And that's how you can go ahead. Today, you're supporting Lual. Tomorrow, it will be someone else. And then the next tomorrow, it will be someone else. And that's how we go ahead. So what I will do, I'll just do a quick presentation on this book. You read the title, Is Black Really Beautiful? And some people are like, what? That's the first question you ask. Just excuse me. That's the first question people ask. Is that not obvious? So, by show of hands, how many of you think black is beautiful?
All of us.
All of you. That is very good. How many of you think it's not? Okay. I'll come to that later. I'll give you my answer and why I asked the question. But the topics I'd like to cover are, why actually write? Why do I write? Why do I bother to write? The second thing is identity versus description. And then answer to the question, is black real beautiful? I'll give you my own personal answer. That's not the final answer. You have your own answer. But when you give your answer, what do? You back it up. You always back it up. You can always disagree with anyone, but what you need to do is give that person the reason why. And then we hear it's a multicultural country. It's just like Canada. We have officialized multiculturalism in the Constitution. So we have that. And I think you have it here. We also know that in any multicultural environment or anti-multiracial country, you always have issues of race. So I'll touch on how I define racism. And then I'll go back a little bit to South Sudan regarding this book. And I'll not talk about the book. I'm not going to read here. You'll have a chance to read. But I'll talk on the cult of personality, where we see some individuals as almost godly. That's one thing. And then the governance in South Sudan. I'll touch on that. So why do I write? One thing is, if you watch TV, and someone says something on TV and you feel like punching the TV, you get really angry. Why did they say that? But you will never see that person. You will never sit with that person. So my answer to that is, I reflect on them. Because I don't have a chance to talk to those people. So what I do is, I write down those ideas. They don't stress me anymore, I put them down. Because they say something really silly on TV, but I can't punch the TV. I can't meet that person, but I don't like what they say. So that's one of my answers. I write and put all my thoughts here. In that case, I do what? I free myself. I become free. The second issue why I write is in relation to my identity. I don't want someone else to define who I am. If they define who I am, I tell them this is who I am. And as Africans, and I bet you, who you are now wasn't your making. From your name, to your country, to your continent, to your race, wasn't your making. It was defined by someone else, and that's your reality. That's what I reject. So I want to write to define my own self, and I wish you would do that. So some things I want you to do is the same thing, to look at your identity after this presentation and ask, is that right or not? The other thing is to define yourself. The third thing is to instrumentalize your education, as I said. You're educated, but what do you do with it? And then the function of humility, to be really humble. If you combine education, instrumentalize it, and be humble, you are invincible. You're invincible. Okay, so as I said, the other thing is to personalize events. I look at events. For those of you who read South Sudanese politics, and we look at one event, we look at it differently. So most of the books that have been written, most of them are written by foreigners, and they look at them using different lenses. That's what we want to change. And then as Africans, even in Australia here, and I think some people who are not well informed, there's this Nigerian, she's a novelist. Her name is Chimamanda Adichie. Maybe some of you have read her books. So she has this story, what she calls a danger of single story, where someone looks at you, they run away with one side of you. Maybe they see one South Sudanese on the street fighting, and all they take away is all South Sudanese are what? Are violent. That's a single story, which is always very dangerous. So when something is said about you, you also have to have your side of the story. Because if the other person tells your story, they'll always say whatever they think is the reality. And I'm glad you can actually change that. The other thing which is fundamental, really, really fundamental, is we all go to school, we get our degrees, we get our fancy papers, we go to work. But everything you learn is within a certain tradition. I remember when I was in school, I was in the first year, and we were doing chemistry. And the professor said, he gave the measurement of a man, and every reference to a man, And after the presentation, he said, remember, the man we're talking about is a white Anglo-Saxon. That is the basic definition of that. It's not any, when you hear a man, so most of the books, especially the books written in the 60s, that's the definition. So it wasn't just any man. So when you're a man, or you're African, or you're Asian, and you think a man, you think it's about you. It wasn't about you. But because it's a man, you just relate to that. So I'm saying that because sometimes there's so many caricatures about Africans, and it's very hard for us to get out of it. That's one reason why I write, to sort of get out of that imprisonment of, for example. And you read that, there's nothing you can do about it because that is something objective. That's something objective. But what you can do is, you learn theories. But how do the theories relate to you? How do the theories relate to you? And how can you functionalize those theories in your own lenses? It sounds really ridiculous, right? It sounds really funny. How do you do that? You can't do that because mindset where you don't think outside that parameters. So that's the challenge, one of your challenges. So, and I hope when you read that paper, what does it say to you? The other thing is, if you read that scientific paper, is there something you can produce out of that? You sit there and read a paper. The paper was written by someone like you, or if you have a theory, the theory was written by someone like you. What you need to do is, can you come out with a theory that's better than that? Someone might say, because we think that there are some people who come up with theories, but it's not us. That's the challenge we have. These are some of the things that propel me to write, so that I look at things the way I want to look at them. They might not be true, but that's my point of view. But when you sit with me, I will defend them, and that's what makes it better. Because if I don't defend them, they mean nothing. So then we come to the question I asked earlier, is black real beautiful? I just want one person to tell me if they think it's yes, and they tell me why they say it's yes. Anyone?
Why? This is the skin I'm in and the way I feel about myself. I feel that the skin I'm in is beautiful and I like it. And also I can give it to any color somebody has been given as a ticket to the earth. So they like their own skin as well. So for me to question my own black, that was, is it beautiful? I can't do that according to what I think about myself.
I will look at it at a religious point of view, but on my own point of view. When I was born, the only thing that I've known is me, right? Which is described as black. But the only thing that I know, the God that created me, I'm an example of it. So I believe that I am beautiful from the day that I was born. But when it becomes a question of intellectual debate and somebody is defining it, that's when these questions come up. But for me, I take it as I am God. I'm an equivalent of God. If that God actually created human being, then I'm equivalent of that God, whether he's black or white or green. I am that God, then I'm beautiful.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. I'll just work with that because of time. So I like the answers you've given, but this is the. So the question is black really beautiful? But the black is in quotes. Now, you can say black is really beautiful, which is fine, but there are two things you need to remember. There's blackness as a metaphor, because not all of you actually are literally black. There's blackness just as a little application. Just say, oh, I'm black, just like the color black. So there are two things. But here's the issue. Blackness is not an identity, it's a description. It's not an identity. It's what someone says, that's what you look like. So it's not an identity, it's a description that you look like. For example, you have a cow, you have a white cow. When I say a cow, I'm not describing it. That is the name, that's what a cow is. But when I say it's a white cow or a black cow, that is a description to differentiate it from another cow. Okay, this is the issue. When I say, is black really beautiful? It depends on what you mean. Some people say black is really beautiful to mean I am beautiful. Blackness is not you, it's the description of you. So when you say black is beautiful and you say yes, there are two things you're doing. You're saying you are blackness yourself. So most of the time I prefer someone to say, for example, you say I am beautiful. That's exactly what makes sense. But when you say black is beautiful, blackness is a description of you. So what you're quantifying is not you, it's your description. So when people think, I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying, but when people say black is really beautiful, what they want to say is I am beautiful. But when you want to say I am beautiful, why can't you say that? Why can't you just say I am beautiful? Or a South Sudanese is beautiful, or a Kenyan is beautiful, or an Ethiopian is beautiful. But what you're doing here, you're describing you're qualifying a description, which is what people think you are. Let me give you an example of three people. You know Barack Obama. Maybe some of you who watch CNN, Soledad O'Brien, and myself. You look at the three of us. We don't look the same, but we are described by the same color. Why is that? What is the relationship between the three of us is not the color, it's our heritage. Which is what? Yes. So Barack has connection with Africa. I have connection with Africa. Soledad has connection with Africa. That is what combines us. It's not the color. Because if you look at the color, it's just ridiculous. So we don't think much about these things because we've been brought up to think that way. We've been brought up. And if I say black is not beautiful, what comes to mind is people think I'm rejecting myself. I'm not rejecting myself. I'm rejecting a tradition that has been placed on me, which I can redefine now. I can redefine who I want to be, not what I find in books. But we'll not go out here all and say today, oh, we are not black. That's not what we will do. But we can question it. We can question that essence. And that's where things begin. So if you say black is really beautiful, you owe it to your audience to say what exactly you mean. Blackness is not you, it's your description. It's just like whiteness is not Europeanness. Whiteness is a description of the Europeans. So they are two separate things. So that is my answer to you. But if you have any question, you can ask later because of time. So as I said, blackness has been assumed as an identity, but it's not an identity. It's a description. But then you can put a metaphor as a metaphorical application to us, which is, it makes sense. If you say you're a black person because it's a metaphor that presents you, then it makes sense. Then there's an issue of blackness as applied. I was watching Miss whatever, I don't know, Miss World or Miss something. And they were being asked one question. The question is, what animal, if you were to be an animal, would you be and why? And a lady from South Africa said something. She said she wanted to be a panther, a black panther, because a panther is black and elegant, and she's a beautiful black woman, just like the panther. Now I was like, okay, what is she talking about? She's saying black panther. You know the blackness of the panther. Are you familiar with that animal? That look like a big cat, but it's black. So she says she wants to be a panther because panther is black and elegant. But remember, the blackness of the panther and her blackness are totally different. So she's now confusing the metaphorical application of blackness and the literal application of blackness, which where the confusion comes in. So if you go with a metaphor, and if you go to this literal, then it doesn't make any sense at all. So just think about it. Like I said, I'm not telling you anything new. I'm just provoking you to think. That's the purpose of this. So, and we are talking here, I don't think I told you anything. But I just told you something to think about. Then, I'd like to focus on racism. Racism as defined now is that one race thinks they are better than another race. Does anyone think that is bad in any way? Just say yes or no if you think it's bad to say my race is better than your race. Is it bad or it's bad? Why is it bad?
My name is Daniel Grant. Race. I think there is a commonality of all humanity and an equality of all humanity. And if you think that one race is better than the other race, I think that is misguided in my personal perspective. Because if I think my race is better than the other race, then I degrade the other race. And that becomes a racial pride. And racial prejudice is born out of racial pride. So I think it is equally bad to think that my race is better than the other race is equally bad. So if my premises is all races are good, and if in the matter they become bad, then all races are bad. But I believe all races are equal and are equally good.
The other race. Okay. I understand what you're saying, but that's a misconception. Let's say, for example, we say, for example, you have your daughter. If I say my race is better, for example, if a German guy tells you as a white person or as a Caucasian and said, look, we built the BMW, we have the BMW, we have the Mercedes, we have all this technology. As an African, what have you done? What have you done? Why am I not better than you? So, this is the thing. To say that one race is better than another is not bad. It's not actually bad, because if a German guy tells me he's better than myself, that his race is better, I don't have an issue with that at all. I don't have an issue with that. Because he will say that, I'll say the same thing. Because I will tell you exactly why my race is better than his race. A Chinese guy will say the same thing. I don't have an issue with that. This is where my problem is. How you use that idea is the problem. So you can sorry with this mic. So that's not the problem. You can say that it's actually healthy. It's healthy for your own racial pride, your mental health. There's no problem with that. This is the problem. The problem is how you use it. If I use that idea to make sure that I employ people from my own race, I kill people from other races, that's where the problem is. But to just say it, it's actually helpful for that person. You can't tell that person not to be proud. You know, for us, for example, the Jim people, not even the Jim people, many tribes in South, we sing songs about our own place. We sing with so much pride that you just wonder what are these people talking about. They're just like the best in the world. There's nothing wrong with that. And they're not saying the other people are bad. It's just something healthy for them. So it's the same thing when you magnify it to the racial parameters. But this is where the problem is. If, for example, I'm from a tree section called Adio, if we have our songs, if, for example, we use that idea of pride to make sure that we kill other people, that's where the problem is. But we just saying it's healthy for us. And that's why I say it's not a problem to say that one race is better than, but it's a problem when you use that to kill, to to demonize. That's where, in the book, if you read the book, I differentiate between racial pride and then the instrument, like the radicalization of racism, which is really, really bad, which the way we look at it now, the contemporary racism. So in itself, it's not a problem. And in, I don't know how many minutes do I have. I don't want to go on and on. Okay. So there's a manuscript I haven't published. But what I wanted to do is, I have a section called Deng versus me. So we're, for example, human beings. And Deng is a human being, I'm a human being. Deng has 2 hands, I have 2 hands. But I want to be different with Deng. I want actually to be different. He sings, I sing. He jumps, I jump. So what I need to do now is to make sure that I have something Deng doesn't have. If I do one, he does it. If I do anything, he does it. So I have to look for something he doesn't have. Or, if he has everything I have, I take one of the things he has and falsify it. And when I falsify it, other people will look at it the way I look at it. So this is the reality we have now in the world, where if you are the same, for example, what as Africans, you know what you've become, how our country is, and everything we have. So the Europeans are just human beings like you. They're just like us. They have feelings, and they have some things to protect. So sometimes when someone says someone is a racist, and we tend to be angry at those people, but why are these people racist? They have feelings. They have to protect who they are. Say 100 years ago, we didn't have many Africans who were writing books, but now they're writing books. We have African doctors, engineers, and they're doing Africans. They have their own countries, their own leaders. Now, for someone who doesn't like the idea of someone being better than them, what do you think they will do? They will try to make sure that they elevate themselves. So when these people do things, some people say, oh, we have these racist people, but why do people become racist? Sometimes I feel sorry for people who are racist, than feeling sorry for myself. Because there's something that's affecting them. They don't think they're better than you. If I know I'm better than you, why would I be afraid of you? It's because there's something they're afraid, something you have that they fear. But they don't reflect themselves as inferior, they reflect themselves as superior to you. So sometimes I tell people, when you see someone who's being racist, try to help them instead of hating them. Try to sit with them and see why do they talk that way. There's something in them, something they're hiding. And if you get into it, you can help them. So these people actually need help. They don't need hate. So that is some of the ideas I discussed in the book. They might not be apparent, but that's the idea. Someone who hates you for a reason. If you're lower than that person, why would they mind if you're lower? It's just because it's something they hate in you, something you need to explain to them. And I think Santino talked about communication. That's the key. If you don't communicate with people, they wouldn't know. And don't expect, I think there's some mainstream Australian here. They're here. They know you. They know your values. And that's why they're here. They're comfortable with you. There's some people who you see on the street. If they're uncomfortable with you, don't hate them, please. They don't know you. It's your chance to explain yourself to them so that they can also sit with you. Even if you are not comfortable with someone, you wouldn't sit with them. And that is what I would also urge you. If someone thinks you're a thug because you look like a young South Sudanese who snatched a purse somewhere else, don't get angry. Just try to say people are different or explain to them. So I think I'll stop there with the race. I've said so many things. Some of them might be ridiculous, but I think I assure you they might make you think. I'm 100% sure of that. So I'll just say briefly, and I'll stop from there, is about this. Some of you read my articles about South Sudan. And so many things are happening in the country, some of the things we don't like, some of the things we might like, some of the things we just don't know. And I'm glad Honorable Majok was here and he said some things. I don't know, he's left. Okay. So South Sudan, ideologically, the main purpose was to present our theories and our events in our own perspective. That's the main purpose, to present them in our own perspective. The second way is to present a way forward. Because he said there's so many problems we have in South Sudan. There's so many problems we agree. We cannot build Canberra in Juba in 10 years. That's impossible. We cannot do that. Or even 20 years. We cannot do that. So some of us who write articles all the time, people tell us, what's wrong with you guys? Why can't you give us time? But this is my main problem in South Sudan. We know the problems, but what we need to know is how the problems will be solved. We hear the president saying this president, I do believe this president can do good things. If he has good advice, if he has good people around him, I do believe that. But this is the main problem we have in South Sudan. We don't have a strategy. Whatever happens, he will always make sure he has the answers because someone else is coming for the answers. The same thing to the Boma leaders, Payam leaders, and then the county leaders. County leaders will be called maybe by the governor or the state assembly. What is happening in terms of security? Every family, I don't know how they call it in other tribes, but for us we call it, thin. I don't know how to call it in English. I don't know. It's clans. But I think it's a sub-clan. Every clan knows who are the criminals. They're criminals. They know them. So if the chief can come to the clan and say, okay, we know this person is troublemaker in that clan. So the chief will hold them accountable. Because the chief knows he will be called later to account for it. That's what we're missing. We need an accountability model from the family. Even the kids have to account to the mother and the father. And the father has to account to the elders. That's what needs to happen, so that we know it progresses from the family up to the National Assembly. The governor can go to the National Assembly, this is what I have. We don't have that. So I have some suggestions they can use, they can model them, they can modify them and use them so that we know. That is tribal accountability. The second one is the political accountability. But I will not talk about political accountability, but financial accountability. It's the same method. Accountability. We always have auditing once a year, but that's only once. And that is higher level government. If we know, if you're a manager, for example, you have workers, you have to make sure that they work 8 hours a day, not 3 hours, 8 hours a day. If they go for lunch, it's 30 minutes. I, as a manager, will have to make sure that I have that, because my manager will call me and say, okay, where are your workers? And then it goes out the chain. We call to account. We don't do that because accountability has to be everyday experience, not once in a year. So that is one of the things, and as young people who are educated, these are the things we need to do. If I criticize today, I don't have to criticize for the sake of criticizing. I have to criticize and actually suggest some alternatives. Because that is what a responsible person does. And instead of saying, oh, this is bad, well, it's bad, what is the alternative? That's what we need to do, and that's what the book is about. The other thing it's about is to rationalize things, which some people might not like, because we build some colored personalities where we see some people as gods. They're not gods. We can criticize them, but we say why we criticize them. That's okay. There's no problem with that. So there's some events in history. Some people have been played down completely. They've done great things, but we don't hear about them. We don't hear about them completely. Why? Because we feel they're not important, or because they are from tribes that are not significant. That's what we have to change. I don't care whether you're Bari or you're Nyangwara or you're Acholi, or I don't care. All I care is what you think. And what you think is what is beneficial to our people. Because I don't care where you come from. I don't care whether your father had 1,000 cows or whatever. I don't care. What I care about is what you tell people now. And that's what we need from you. So I'm sorry I've been maybe a little grumpy and taking a long time. But I just want to provoke you to think. And that's the bottom line of this presentation. And thank you. If you have any questions, just let me know.